The garage gym.
One of my favorite topics. This is so near and dear to my heart.
And myself as well. I mean, as we would both say, beyond a shadow of a doubt, it's fantastic. You're going to the gym, you get your friends around you, it's full of life and energy and all that stuff. But a garage gym, the roots of CrossFit, there's something about a gritty garage gym where work just gets done.
And just being able to take your own destiny, grip to grip, the best thing ever. I love it.
Open whenever you want, never closes.
Music's always good.
Yep. Yep. Never a crowd.
No, never a crowd. Company's always great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the best.
And nobody gets on me about my technique.
Right.
For better or for worse.
And you know what? More often than not, I'm number one in the garage gym too.
Always
finish first.
Won every workout. I shouldn't say I won every workout out there, but I do okay. The outfitting of the garage gym, the pieces of gear, the space in and of itself, so many factors to consider. We're going to dive down all these different places, but before we clicked on the cameras, I was kind of saying that I had a list of gear, maybe 10 or 11 pieces of, varying levels of importance. And you said you had that, but then you also had some other factors that were paramount to consider, which I didn't have. Yeah. So I was like, you know what? Go ahead, run with this for a while. When this topic of the garage gym came up, where did your mind go with it?
Well, I kind of went big picture, as I am wont to do. And thinking kind of philosophically about it, I feel that everybody should have a space that they can cut away to, get the job done, and it's not going to take away too much of your day. It's maybe a supplement to what you can do in a full facility, but there should be something. It's kind of like everybody has a kitchen in their house. You can prepare food. Maybe you eat out a lot. I don't know what your lifestyle is, but you have the option so that you can come in, prepare a meal, and get the job done. I feel the same way about the garage gym. To me, it's that essential. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a fully decked out thing. And my first quote unquote garage gym was a pull-up bar and a kettlebell inside the kitchen of my San Francisco apartment. So we're talking about, a 10 by 8 space. Yeah. All the way up to, I had a fully decked out gym in the last house that I lived in. It was a beautiful garage gym. I had an affiliate out of there with friends and family that would come over and work out regularly. So I think anything in between those two extremes can get it done. So that's where I went initially. I just feel it's that important.
You had all the cool T-shirts on the wall. It was such a wonderful backdrop for the podcast as well. But
it'll be back.
Okay, so yes, big space, small space. So the space itself has to be considered.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that there's kind of 3 big picture elements when you're starting to piece it together that you should consider. Number 1 is, what kind of space realistically do you have access to? Is it just a little bit of a broom closet? Is it, the full garage that you're not going to be parking both cars in anymore? What is it realistically that you're going to have access to? Because that not only informs what your priority of choices should be for purchasing, in my opinion, but it's also going to inform kind of what you can do regularly. Mm-hmm. So space is number 1. The second thing I think you need to consider is your own level of experience. And kind of as an offshoot of that, what do you know how to use right now? Obviously, you'll get better with things as you practice and as you continue to kind of refine. But I think it's maybe not the best idea to see something that you're less familiar with and prioritize that as a first purchase. So for example, maybe you are somebody that's looking to get into something like kettlebell training, but you know how to use a barbell already. Probably better to prioritize the barbell because it's your bread and butter than the kettlebell. That could come later. The likelihood that you're going to refine that technique having not known it in the first place is low. And then the likelihood that can be demotivating and it ends up just kind of collecting dust, that goes up as well. So in my opinion, you go with what you know first. What do you like? What do you know how to do? How much space do you have?
Some things in the garage gym do collect a bit of dust.
Yes. Yeah. So I've got more to talk about on those topics. So I think once you've explored a little bit how much space, how much experience, what do you like to do, and you've made some decisions along those lines, then I think it's starting to look for bang for your buck items. So if you know that you want to be, doing X, Y, and Z, those are the kind of priorities you have in your fitness. Try to find the tools that will check off the biggest bang for your buck on that list. And so again, using the barbell as kind of the de facto tool, which I think most people will anyway. The amount of work that you can get done with that simple tool and the versatility that it offers makes it a pretty obvious front runner for a personal gym.
For sure.
Something that's more specialized and doesn't have that kind of utility might be fun to have, but probably is going to be deprioritized for that reason. So big bang for your buck has to be considered. And then the last thing I'll touch on before we get into the nitty gritty is that, okay, we've got how much space, how much experience, what do I like to do? What's the thing that's going to help kind of cover that with the bang for my buck? And then you got to start asking, what should I avoid? And to me,
yes.
Yeah, the two big pitfalls. Number one, this is the one that's insidious, is the periphera. I cannot tell you how many people I've talked to, and they're like, well, I can't afford a garage gym. And I'm like, in the last month, I've seen you come to the gym with a new pair of knee sleeves, a new pair of workout shoes, a new workout wardrobe, on and on and on. I'm like, if you would have just not bought these things that you already had and just been content to, last another season with what you got, that would have been a barbell right there. That's a road barbell beater bar that would last you the rest of your life, Yep.
So everything is economics. It's just decisions as to how you're allocating resources.
Exactly. So the periphera is a real tough one. And I would also say that the exotic one-offs are things that you should avoid. Everybody loves the new gadget.
Yes.
Everybody loves when they're like, oh, the skier guy, I love it so much. I'm sure you do. Let me tell you from experience.
Instagram too, that you always see somebody doing some oddity, just some sort of physical oddity on Instagram. You're like, well, I'm not doing that. I should probably be doing it. I definitely
need to buy a strongman log. 100%. I should absolutely do that. But let me tell you from experience that should you go down that road, you will gain approximately 2 months of extreme enjoyment from that thing, and then it will be a purchase that sits on the edge of the rest of your training facility for a long time, and you'll wish that you might have poured that money into something else. So
I think that's very fair.
There's a time and a place for that kind of thing, but just ask yourself when. That might not be the primary purchase.
So those are your big picture buckets.
Yes.
And now you said you've got some nitty gritty for each one of those?
Well, no, not exactly. I mean, the nitty gritty is just kind of if we take all of those points and kind of consider them, what does that amount to? With me actually putting rubber to the road and buying something, what does that look like? For me, I think that you're going to look at, number one, a barbell that you can afford with some plates. Doesn't need to be enough plates for a 1 rep max, but some plates that you can use, a light load, and something that's kind of moderate heavy. That range is about all you need to start. So for most people, a pair of 10s, a pair of 25s, a pair of 45s, that'll get you plenty for a long time. Doesn't need to be 1 rep max heavy.
True.
So a barbell with those plates, somewhere to do pull-ups, and either a set of rings or a pair of moderate weighted dumbbells. That's top of the list. If you had that and nothing else, you've got years worth of work to do.
You got a lot of fitness in those tools right there.
Exactly. And so there you have it. End of episode.
Literally, it could be. It is that simple. And if you have some creativity, some basic knowledge of programming, or you follow somebody that you know, like, and trust, life is golden, and you're phenomenal. I'm going to take it into a little bit of a list format, but I will say, based upon your things, the space thing I think is a great place to start, right? I mean, square footage solves a lot of problems. If you just space is no issue, you can get all kinds of stuff, big toys, who cares? But it is really cool to know that if you are in a 1-bedroom apartment in San Francisco or New York City, where space is precious, square footage is precious, with very minimal gear, very minimal space, you can do so much work. I bet with that pull-up bar and kettlebell and the knowledge you had between your ears that you spoke about, you got some work done with that stuff.
Yeah, I never ran out of things to do. We'll put it that way. There was never a time when I came to work out in my kitchen gym where I said, well, you know what? There's just nothing to work on. Never happened.
And I love seeing it. It motivates me. I see the photos of people's garage gyms or house gyms or apartment gyms, that just that cross my feed or whatnot. And some people have obviously struck some sort of wonderfully beneficial arrangement with their spouse or whatnot, because in the middle of the kitchen, there's a pull-up bar bolted to the wall, and somebody's doing something and you see somebody in the background, holding an L-sit or doing strict pull-ups. It's like, that's just super cool. People working with what they've got. But I'm going to go with, yes to the things that you said. And now I'm going to give it in more of a list format. And you're one of the few human beings that I don't have to say this to, because it just is in your nature, but feel free to push back.
Okay. Will do.
So I went initially for gear that would deliver bang for the buck, both from an economical standpoint of just fiscally speaking for your budget, but then also didn't take up much room at all. So that was my number one, which is why my number one isn't a barbell, because I just assumed tight space, low budget, but we could take it in a different direction. So first thing I would say is set of dumbbells. And if you're lucky enough to have, now what loading comes into play, a pair of 50s pounders for men, pair of 35s for women is a very common loading in CrossFit. But just because that's a common loading doesn't mean that's what you should necessarily get. In all honesty, I use dumbbells a lot. 50s are no joke. Yeah.
Especially if you're just starting out or you're learning. 50s are going to be a bear.
They're going to be a bear. Yeah. So even though you may see a common loading, don't feel bad at all about purchasing a lighter weight. That is not a defamation of your character. That is a smart decision. And even though I have got a pair of 50s out there, very frequently will go out even after 16 years of CrossFit and grab the 35s and just get my tail worked over by them. So again, make the right choice for you. They also make some really cool bomb-proof adjustable dumbbells that maybe you don't want to drop from overhead and things like that. But if that could fit into your budget, sky's the limit. That's fantastic. And I could almost say with just the dumbbells, in a worst case scenario, you're good. Yeah, you're good.
Absolutely.
It'd be great to have a pull-up bar, and that's number 2 on my list, because a pull-up bar is one of those things that is just really hard to replicate if you don't have one. But let's just say that you didn't, and you just did an insane amount of just bent over rows and dumbbell lat pullovers. Like there would be things that you would be able to do less ideal than a pull-up bar, but you would be okay. Trapped on a desert island with a pair of adjustable dumbbells and a lot of knowledge, you would be a ferocious beast when the rescue team, came to get you.
No question.
Dumbbells, number 1. Number 2, pull-up bar. Ideally,
we're a match on the number 2.
Yes, and ideally, rugged and sturdy, bolted to the wall, to the ceiling, that in a beautiful scenario, could support not just strict, but the velocity and momentum of a kipping pull-up. And if your ceiling height allowed for it and you got one of those pull-up bars that had good standoff from the wall, you could have the possibility for bar muscle-ups on there as well. And then, the world is your oyster with that kind of a pull-up bar and a set of dumbbells. And then, then you just get your tail outside and run. You're not going to melt in the rain. Just go run.
Exactly.
So that's great.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't even mention that because it was such a given. And I think that maybe it is worth pausing there for a minute. And that, that's one of those tools we were actually talking offline before we started recording about how underutilized that can be as a tool. And I mean, that's something that everybody has access to right now. It doesn't matter where you are, you can make that happen. And, I can already see the comments. Yeah, but I live on a... So what? You're going to run down the stairs and then find a way to run and then run back up the stairs. Right. Deal with it. People have been doing it forever.
Move
it's
your
totally
body.
Free, and you can do it right now. So should be should be in everybody's arsenal, in my opinion.
And there's a lot of knobs you could turn with that. You can run short, you can run long, you can run fast, you can run slow, you can run moderate, you can run intervals. It's just as limitless. So
find some stairs, find a hill, whatever.
Find a hill.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Find a hill, and you're going to be good to go. So, okay. Anyway, so that's dumbbells, pull-up bars, and then the next thing I said is there's so many different directions I could go. This might be a bit personal, but I would love a set of gymnastics rings. They're so inexpensive, all things considered. Yeah. And if you can hang them from the ceiling, amazing, go for it. But if you can't, and you're in one of those apartments in New York City or whatnot, throw those straps over your pull-up bar that you bolted somewhere, and they're low. They're like a ring dip height. Again, with some creativity and a little bit of Google research on the internet, there's a myriad of gymnastics movements, from the very simple to so profoundly complicated and hard you can't do them with the current strength level that you have, that you'll be able to do with those gymnastics rings, that it will open up a whole nother world to you, from dynamic movements to static holds. And then we're talking, ring rows, ring muscle ups, low ring muscle ups, ring dips. I mean, just
variations
fantastic.
Of ring push-ups.
Variations of ring
different
push-ups.
Positions, straight arm support work that you can start getting into on the low rings. I mean, man,
they take up no space when you're not using them. You just slide them to the side of the pull-up bar. You don't even know that they're there. I
will say that they are the best portable garage gym as well. I can't tell you how many times I've gone on vacation somewhere, or I've been going away for a weekend to relative's house or something, and I'll just throw them in my luggage. And now I've got, an option. Maybe I don't always take that option, but I've got it. It's a 2-second decision. It doesn't take up a lot of space. It doesn't take up a lot of weight. It's easy to set up when I get there. Great to have that option.
The rings are a beast. Okay, the next one here, this could go anywhere in the list, and it's not a necessity, but I threw it on because it's also, economically speaking, it's just so inexpensive and it's nice to have. That's just a jump rope. It's, for $35, you can get yourself a jump rope. You're in that. Do you need one? No, you absolutely do not need one. And as a matter of fact, if you're looking for another option and workout calls for double unders or single unders, just do jumping jacks. And I'll tell you what, if you haven't done jumping jacks in a long time and somebody calls for like 100 double unders, and you go and attempt to do a set of 100 jumping jacks, you will be devastatingly and shocked at how hard a set of like 100 simple high school jumping jacks are. So don't need it. It's simple. It's inexpensive. Again, it takes up like no space, the jump rope.
Yeah.
Easy.
So wait, where'd you put that? What number are we on now? That's 4 or 5?
That's number 4. That's number 4.
Okay. In my opinion, I think that's a little high. I get that.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's so cheap. That's why I put it there.
Fair enough. I like it for that reason. And I will say also that I don't think people do enough with their jump rope. It just becomes a tool for double unders. And to me, that's like saying, well, I have a barbell, but I only deadlift with it. Like, what? Why? Well, that's just what I do. I only deadlift with this barbell. Well, what about a front squat once in a while? No. Just deadlift. Like, why would you do that? I feel the same way about the jump rope. It was explained to me best the last time that I had the absolute pleasure of going through one of Buddy Lee's workshops, which a couple of years ago, it was pretty recently actually. And he and his assistant instructor were taking questions at the end of the day, and they were talking about just like the jump rope as a tool. And he put it back rhetorically. It was basically, what other thing do you have that offers you the ability to develop such skill and finesse? It's not about absolute intensity. It's not about, total sprint effort. It's not about maxing out, but it is about ongoing skill development and finesse. What other thing do you have that is just purely focused on that? And put in that light, I was like, wow, that's a really big light bulb moment for me about the jump rope as a tool. So
I would have to agree with that, because I scratched down on my notes here next to jump rope. Inexpensive, takes up no space. Conditioning, but also coordination, accuracy, agility, but like the the neurological components, in this simple little thing that now I think of these first 4 steps: dumbbells just tucked in the corner, pull-up bar bolted to the wall, gymnastics rings hung from that pull-up bar, slid to the side, jump rope slung over the pull-up bar. We're taking up no square footage.
Right. Yep.
Like zilch.
The average
And
closet will have plenty of room with all of that in there, and
and you've got some amazing tools at your disposal, and you haven't broken the bank at all thus far. Okay, so now number 5, and this is where things might get a bit contentious. I'm still not saying a barbell yet. I'm going to sneak one more thing in there, again, based upon space and economics. Okay. And the last thing is, and this could be, go in a different direction if you want, a sandbag. And the sandbag, because, compared to like a D-ball, if you buy a 100-pound or 150-pound D-ball, you have to pay for shipping a 100 or 150-pound item. If you buy a durable nylon or canvas sandbag, it ships empty. It's dirt cheap. Goes to your house, whatever loading makes sense for you. And then you have this 100-pound or 150-pound or whatever makes sense you implement just sitting there that, again, takes up no space. And you can get in heavy, cleans over the shoulders, bear hugs, holds, front squats, carries, loads in an odd object, miserable deal that when you get your hands on like a 150-pound barbell, you'll launch that thing into the universe after, ripping around this 150-pound sandbag. That I think sandbags are just phenomenal, take up minimal space. So that would be my contentious number 5 for an economical option. And I think you could get dumbbells. If you chose one set that made sense for you, dumbbells, a rugged pull-up bar bolted to the wall, a pair of gymnastics rings, a jump rope, and a sandbag delivered to your door for ballpark $500, which is like the cost of barbells and plates, or you'd have to spend even more than that. So for $500, I think you can go a long way, and we haven't taken up a lot of space yet.
I'm going to push back on the sandbag pretty hard.
Go for it.
I think that it's been my experience. I've built a lot of sandbags over the years. I think the first sandbag that I ever constructed for myself, I went to the Army Navy store, like the surplus store. I bought an old sea bag, filled it up with 100. I went to the, I have a long-standing injury from this, from this little endeavor.
I don't know why I'm laughing.
It's probably 2004. Oh man. And I took my sea bag that I just purchased to the hardware store. I was living in San Francisco at the time. It was probably just shy of a mile from my house. And show up to the checkout of the hardware store, and I said, I'd like 150 pounds of sand, please. And the guy at the checkout says, sure, no problem. Just pull your vehicle around and we'll load it up for you. And I didn't know how to respond. I just put my sack up on the the register and said, I'll take it in this. And he didn't know how to respond. And we finally kind of met eye to eye, and he realized I didn't have a car, and I realized that it wasn't him that was going to load up this sand. So we got the sand in the bag, long story short, and I just walked home with it. And anyway, I stepped off a curb poorly, and it was not great for my back, and I still have some kind of funkiness from that from time to time. That's not the big picture here. The big picture is that I have a lot of experience building sandbags, and my experience with sandbag training is it is hot cold. I at least would get really fired up on it. I would be hard charging for a week or two, and then it was like something just shut the lights off, and I wouldn't want anything to do with it for months. And for that reason, I feel like it's not a great choice. But maybe that's more personality driven and more what I'm inclined to do, which kind of brings me back to my point previously of what do you know about yourself? Is this something that is going to be, a tool that you utilize? If so, great, go for it. I agree with you 100%. Can't beat it.
And the space factor, right? I mean, you could still do this in a 5x5 closet. Yep.
But be realistic. If that's not the thing for you, then I would caution against a sandbag. And I'll make a strong case for barbell. I agree. It's a little bit more out the gate expense. No question there. But if you're smart about it, and like I said, you don't feel that you need to buy like a full run of plates on your first outing. And let's be honest, most of us, the bottom of the barrel barbell at this point from a reputable company it's going to last you the rest of your life.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
You do not need $1,000 bearing bar that, spins beautifully and is weighted to the millimeter. I mean, that's great if you have the cash to splash around, fine.
Yep.
But most of us, it's not going to make a difference. So
no,
get something
fully
reasonable.
Agree. And oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the adjustability of that tool, I think, magnifies its utility tenfold.
Yep.
That's why I think it's so important on the list, is that you can do a light high rep workout with that. You can do a heavy low rep workout. You can do everything in the middle. The amount of movements that you can do combined with that range of loading, I think the versatility is just second to none. So that's my case for the barbell ahead of some of those things you mentioned.
So, in all honesty and fairness, and potentially bad on me for not explaining, I think after the first four of, dumbbells, pull-up bar, gymnastics rings, jump rope, then I see a potential fork in the road. And that fork in the road is, I'm upstairs in that one-bedroom apartment, don't have space for a 7-foot wide barbell, can't do anything. Maybe you can get yourself a soft, heavy object that you could make yourself into a beast with. If you do have the space and the budget, then we're going to go the barbell route. And the barbell route is, so that I see that Y kind of goes right there. Mm-hmm. The barbell.
And I agree with you. Space-wise, if space and finances are the primary concerns, then I absolutely agree with you that that's the way to go.
The barbell, I agree. I would love to see somebody, you can go a very economical route for sure. I've done that. I, to this day, don't own any of those barbells because, they slid apart or did something, they weren't made to be used ruggedly. But if possible, if you could save some funds for a little bit, I do believe it's the whole, buy cheap, buy twice kind of a thing. So ideally, you can get yourself a good barbell that's going to last you. Get yourself the array of bumper plates you mentioned earlier, I think is spot on. And much like you said as well, hey, you know what? You don't have enough plates for a 1 rep max deadlift. You're going to get really strong pulling 4 sets of 7. You're going to get really strong. And so you do what you can do. So the barbell and plates would be the next one. After that, I would say squat stands if you can. Would be a wonderful thing to have. If space, again, wasn't an issue, you could go squat stands, squat rack. If you had the space and the finances to get an apparatus that has like the built-in safety spotter bars, that's a great thing if you're just solo in your garage and you really want to go for it and you don't want to have in your history what I have, and I'm sure you have as well, which is some very dramatic ditches under heavy loading.
Yeah, but I'm okay with that. I feel like the squat stands really are only going to become a factor when you're doing something like a bench press, in my opinion. I think that it's nice to have mentally. A way out is always nice. Right. But I have failed a lot of front squats and a lot of back squats in my day. And probably 90% of them were either unspotted or without a spot rack. Sure. An option for spotting in the rack. And I had no problem with that. I think if it's something that you learn how to do.
Sure. And I'm alive to tell the tale as well. Yeah. So from having lived that same life, but I've got a set now with the spotter bars, and it could be just a mental thing, but it's so very nice to know that they're there. Like
you're in good hands.
just in case it's the one time that my reflexes aren't, my reflexes are razor sharp, Bobs. But just in case it's the one time that I'm a little groggy and the central nervous system just doesn't get me out of there as quick as possible.
Okay, that's fair.
But if you don't, and for the longest time, I didn't, I just had a set of squat stands initially, long time ago, and didn't trust myself really to go for like a true 1 rep back squat. And that's why for the longest time, I embraced the front squat, because it's so much easier to ditch. And I just front squat all the time. And I very rarely went super heavy on the back squat. And my fitness was just fine, So again, there's always some sort of a workaround there as well. Okay, where would you say, because I've got a couple things on the list here which are super popular items.
Okay.
You know, people
I've
want
got some
them.
questions for you too. Okay.
They want them and they crave them. And some people feel like they should be, at various positions on the list. The medicine ball and a box to jump on.
I'd say relatively low for both. I think the medicine ball would beat out the box, in my opinion, because the box can be, you can substitute for that with a number of different items that you probably have already. You can find a ledge to jump to or step to. You can set up something that you have that's sturdy already, a bench or something like that. So for that reason, I think a specific box is lower on the list for me. A medicine ball is a little bit higher for that reason. And when and if you do get the medicine ball, I think you want to pick a weight that's a little bit lighter than what you're going to be using for the heaviest movement that you're going to do. So for example, if you're like, well, I'm just going to buy a 20 pounder and call it a day. It's like, well, that's great if all you want to do is wall ball and you're a gentleman, But if you want to do anything else with that, you want to throw it, you want to do some, more exotic style, kind of true, like classic med ball training, like it was intended before wall ball became a thing, lighter is going to be a little bit better. You'll get more versatility out of it. But I think you can get away without a med ball for a long time. I think that's one of the nice to have. And that's like once you're established.
We are in alignment on that one, my friend. Yep. Yeah. I feel the same way. And you make a good point that if you're going to go more of the classic medicine ball training, you're doing throws and things like that. Okay, that's a different deal. But if you're looking for, I got to get in my wall balls, you can go a long way with light thrusters, jumping air squats. Like you're going to be okay. You're going to be all right.
I'll also say that pick one that's going to apply itself to a few different tasks. And so, for example, in my garage gym, I only ever bought the slam ball style medicine balls. And that's what I'd use for wall ball as well. I'm like, it's the same weight, and people would complain. They're like, doesn't the smaller diameter bother you? I'm like, no, it doesn't. It's not a big deal. And I can do a lot more with this thing than I could with, the bigger, softer Dynamax. I can beat it up. I can slam it. I can do all sorts of stuff. And you know what? It's just as hard to throw to a target. So
right, sure. Yeah,
I recommend one, because then I just needed one and I didn't have to, have this whole run of them for specific tasks.
It gets the job done in the box as well. Like you could probably build one. You could probably make one. You could probably find something to jump on that's sturdy. And let's say, I don't know, you're locked in a concrete cell with no furniture. The good old tuck jump. Tuck jumps are so awful that you would probably wish that you had a box.
Is the broad jump. I think it's criminally underused, and not just like a broad jump, hope for the best, but mark out a 3 or 4 foot section, put some chalk on the floor or some tape or whatever, and use that as your metric. Like every rep, you got to jump over it. I mean, that's tough work.
Agreed.
You don't need anything for that.
Isn't there some? There's a hero WOD for CrossFit that I think you have a vest on, because I remember when it was programmed that like Tony Budding had me test it, and I want to say it involved broad jumps. I want to say it involved with a weight vest, broad jumps for some sort of distance you had to cover. And of course, you wanted to try to cover it in as few jumps as possible. And I think it was a couplet, and the other thing it was paired with was like a bear crawl. Does that ring a bell at all?
It does not, but I do remember a few workouts that were. I think there was one. This is early days. A challenge that was like a mile of burpee broad jumps. No vest, at least that I recall. And I don't know that I'd recommend that. That's a pretty rough outing.
I was going to say, I'm happy to talk with somebody about that, but I'm going to take a pass on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would agree with you on the med ball in the box. Now, the last section here, the last 2-part section, we've got to talk about, we're probably getting into the area now if somebody wants the cardio machine, so to speak.
Oh, perfect. This is going to be my question to you too.
Okay, well, what's your question?
I bet you're on the same wavelength. Okay, so there's 2 camps, and never how does the saying go? Never the twain shall meet. Mm-hmm. Something like that. Very polarizing.
Very.
Do you buy a rower or some sort of air bike as your primary, conditioning tool?
I've got my horse on this one.
You do? Okay.
Yep.
I'll say I'm pretty agnostic, to be honest.
Okay.
I like them both. And
they're both great.
I think if I had to, like, gun to my head, you got to pick one, I'm probably going to go with the rower over the air bike.
I'm going with the rower as well.
Okay.
If I could only have one.
Yeah.
And that's it for the rest of my life. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to have
air bike
both. I mean, right? Yeah. I mean, if it's raining money, it doesn't matter. Like, I'd love to have both. And they're both fantastic, and they both serve a great function. But in my mind, if I had to have one, I'm going with the rower. It's more demanding of technique, right? Like, it doesn't just force you into the moon pattern. Like, you have to actually row properly. And when I think about the range of motion, for lack of a better word, about the joints and the development that will take place there, that's why it gets my nod. If I had to have one.
Couldn't agree more. Those are exactly the same points that I had. And I think that it is more disparate than the kind of conditioning you would get from something like running. Whereas I feel like air bike and running, obviously they're different, but I think they're overlapping more so than like rowing and running.
Yep. No, I agree.
I've seen plenty of great runners just fall apart on the rower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so. The rower would get my nod. They'd both be great. The one thing I do like an air bike for more is if I have programmed something where almost something that would, well, you said it, that it's a nice replication, not nice, but more similar to running. Because when I think about if, like, let's say 10 by 100 meter dashes are programmed. So it's short time domain. Let's say for a lot of people, depending on how fast you are, 12 to 15 seconds.
Yep.
I can spin up the air bike and develop a sting a lot quicker in 12 to 15 seconds than I can on the rower in 12 to 15 seconds. Agree. And so for some things, that air bike just fits beautifully, kind of in a way that the rower doesn't, but that's a small number of cases that, again, if I had to have one, I'm going rower.
Yeah, I think the only way that the air bike gets priority, in my opinion, is if you have somebody who is maybe they have a few more miles on them, they're a little bit beat up. I feel the air bike is one of those tools that almost no matter what condition you're in, you have an injury, you haven't worked out in a while, whatever the case may be, air bike is going to be appropriate. Not always, of course. I mean, nothing's absolute, but for the most part, the air bike is, anybody's going to have a really great response, regardless of where they're starting from.
Really great response.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly.
It will deliver the goods. There's no doubt about it. You look at us.
So I think athletes in that situation might prioritize the air bike first.
Yeah, for sure. And okay, so that kind of rounds out my list. Obviously the list could go on ever and ever. I have an honorable mention.
Okay.
And this is one. Ooh, this is contentious to say, but this is a personal decision that I might choose this item over a bike or rower if because the bike or rower, they're not inexpensive, right? So we're talking about a decent pool of money.
Yep. And for me, they take up a pretty good amount of space too.
Oh, great!
The footprint is not small.
I would personally really be on the fence if I had that sum of money saved up. I might go with, over a bike or a rower, a GHD.
Ooh, hard disagree.
Allow me to
curious.
Say why, and I think it's probably a very personal thing. But again, because I can get my tail out there and run, and I can sprint. If I may not like it in the winter and whatnot, but for me personally, with the horrific treatment I've given my skeletal structure over the course of my life, with breaking my pelvis and multiple motorcycle wrecks that I can't even count, and my neck's held together by tinfoil, the GHD, I personally think for me, has been just a magical fountain of youth for my back. I think it has, all the stuff that was said at the level 1, but there's nothing sexy or flashy about doing anything in the GHD. It's monotonous and boring.
It's foundation work.
Right. I'm on that thing at least twice a week, if not 3 times a week, doing hip and back extensions. And just like they said at the level 1, that developing of kinesthetic awareness, that strengthening of your midline under absolutely no load other than your body, full flexion and extension of the hip and the entire spinal column, I think is not only so beneficial for just having a strong head to toe foundational structure from which you can do everything else in the gym, but I also think, just like we used to say, it is rehabilitative, those achy, creaky backs or whatnot. And I think for me personally, it's one of those things that has allowed me to go as long as I have, as well as I have, 16 years into CrossFit. I think the GHD is this huge, takes up a tremendous amount of square footage. It's bulky, it's expensive. And I think it's one of those things that if I didn't use it as regularly as I do, I personally I'd be worse off for it. So that would be one of those things that I would, and we're not even talking about, various holds, GHD sit-ups, glute ham raises, makeshift reverse hyper, like all this, again, not sexy or flashy stuff that keeps the foundation of the building just structurally sound, that I would give serious contemplation to a GHD.
Yeah, my pushback on that is obviously space and finances,
right?
Things like that. I also feel that a lot of people, once they have a GHD, again, that's that hot cold thing that we're talking about.
I absolutely agree. Absolutely, most people don't use it enough, I think.
I agree. Totally agree. And then my question is, how much self-knowledge would one have to have before they could make that decision to prioritize the GHD as a purchase? Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think the benefit that you have being a ways down the road on your fitness journey, so to speak, I think that allows you to make that call. I think for somebody that's newer and just piecing together their gear for the first time, they're not going to know that. And for that reason, I think it's too risky of a gamble to put all your pennies into. So that's my 2 cents on the GHD.
If you're going to pull the trigger on it, you better be darn sure you're going to use it, or you're going to have a hole in your wallet and a lot less space in your garage. Correct.
And all that said, I agree with everything that you had to say about people don't use it enough. It is an insanely beneficial tool. The amount of benefit that you'll get from having that is tremendous, no question. I just hesitate to put that on a list of priorities. That to me is a later question.
It was my honorable mention.
Interesting choice. Interesting choice. My honorable mention is the kettlebell. And I think I have to recognize that that's a bit of a bias. I started training with them pretty early on, and I might even buy one before I bought a dumbbell, just because I like training with them. And I find that you can do some fun things that are harder to do with a dumbbell. You can't really do any sort of as many like swinging movements or, catch and release kind of movements. And I like that kind of training. Other people might not gravitate towards it. And in that case, it doesn't really matter if you go dumbbell or kettlebell. But for me personally, I might throw that in there as the honorable mention.
Well, again, like you said, with your initial setup of a pull-up bar and a kettlebell, a lot of work was accomplished.
Yeah.
So again, limitless finances and limitless square footage solve a lot of problems.
Sure do.
But whatever you've got available, budget-wise or space-wise, there is a garage gym or apartment gym solution that you can make happen. And you may want something else, but you may not need something else. And it's good to know the difference. So that's about that. Well, as always, if you're listening to this via podcast, thanks for tuning in. But make sure you go to the Beyond the Whiteboard YouTube channel, go to this particular video, leave comments. Boz and I read all the comments. We were actually chatting earlier about some ones that were left that gave us an idea for a potential future show. So if you've got a different list, if you think my list is the worst thing you've ever heard, if you think Boz's 3 criteria are just, off the mark, or if you like it, let us know your thoughts. We'll check them out. And until next time, enjoy the show.